In the affluent hills of Beverly Hills, California, police discovered 3 bodies in a $5 million mansion on the morning of March 18, 2023. A successful couple, Marcus and Jasmine Thompson, lay dead alongside their loyal housekeeper, Rosa Martinez. But what made this case extraordinary wasn't just the brutality of the murders. It was the love letter found in the killer's pocket, addressed to one of the victims. Who could love someone so deeply that they would kill an entire family to possess them? What you're about to hear isn't just another murder case. This is the story of a pathological obsession that spanned 15 years. A love so twisted it became lethal, and how one man transformed himself into a ghost to stay close to the woman he believed belonged to him. Beverly Hills, California, where Hollywood dreams come true and million-dollar mansions line perfectly manicured streets. Behind the gates of 1247 Sunset Ridge Drive lived what appeared to be the perfect American success story. Jasmine Rivera Thompson was everything you'd imagine when you picture the American dream realized. At 34, this stunning Mexican-American woman had risen from the barrios of East LA to become one of the most sought-after ballet instructors in Southern California. Her journey from poverty to prosperity was the kind of story that made headlines, but Jasmine preferred to let her work speak for itself. She had met Marcus Thompson at a charity gala in 2019. Marcus, a 38-year-old African-American entrepreneur, owned a chain of upscale restaurants that had made him a millionaire by age 30. Their love story was a modern fairy tale. 2 people from different backgrounds who found in each other not just love, but a shared vision of what life could be. Their home was a testament to their success. The sprawling mansion featured floor-to-ceiling windows, an infinity pool that seemed to merge with the Los Angeles skyline, and an art collection worth more than most people's homes. But it was the dance studio Marcus had built for Jasmine in the East Wing that truly captured the essence of their relationship. A space where she could pursue her passion while he watched, utterly devoted. Rosa Martinez had been with the family for 3 years. The 52-year-old housekeeper from Guatemala wasn't just an employee, she was family. She lived in the comfortable guest house behind the main residence and took care of the couple with the devotion of a mother. Her English was accented but clear, her smile warm and genuine. She had planned to retire soon and return to her hometown, but the Thompsons had become her second family. But here's what none of them knew. For the past 15 years, someone had been watching. Someone had been planning. Someone had been waiting. David Chen appeared to be the embodiment of Silicon Valley's success. At 41, this Chinese-American software engineer had built a modest fortune developing cybersecurity applications for Fortune 500 companies. His Pasadena home was filled with the latest technology. His garage housed a Tesla and a vintage Porsche, and his bank account held over $2 million. To his neighbors, David was the quiet, polite man who kept to himself, but always had a friendly wave. To his colleagues, he was the brilliant programmer who could solve problems others couldn't even understand. To his family back in San Francisco, he was the successful son who sent money home and visited dutifully during holidays. But David Chen harbored a secret that would have horrified anyone who knew him. Since 2008, he had been utterly, completely, and dangerously obsessed with Jasmine Rivera. It started innocently enough. David had attended a ballet performance at the Los Angeles Dance Academy where Jasmine was performing. She was 19 then, a rising star in the ballet world, and something about her grace, her beauty, her very presence had struck David like lightning. He attended every performance she was in for the next 6 months. He told himself it was just appreciation for art, but deep down, he knew it was something darker. When Jasmine left the academy to teach at various studios around Los Angeles, David followed her career moves with the dedication of a sports fan following a favorite team. He knew where she taught, what time her classes ended, which coffee shop she frequented. He learned her schedule better than she knew it herself. The truly disturbing part wasn't just the stalking, it was the elaborate fantasy life David had constructed around Jasmine. In his mind, they were meant to be together. Every man she dated was an obstacle to their destined union. Every job she took, every move she made, every decision she made was something he analyzed for how it affected their relationship. But David was too smart to be a common stalker. He never approached her directly, never left gifts, never made himself known. Instead, he used his considerable technical skills to invade her life in ways that were far more insidious and completely invisible. By 2015, David had hacked into every electronic device Jasmine owned: her phone, her laptop, her social media accounts. He monitored them all. He knew her passwords, her private messages, her browser history. He knew about every fight she had with boyfriends, every doubt she had about her career, every intimate detail of her life. When she started dating Marcus Thompson in 2019, David was there, watching through her phone's camera as she got ready for their first date. He was listening through her microphone as she called her best friend to gush about this amazing man she'd met. He was reading her text messages as their relationship blossomed into love. But David didn't just watch, he began to act. When Jasmine was struggling to find a new teaching position in 2020, David anonymously sent her resume to several studios, positioning himself as her invisible guardian angel. When she was worried about her aging mother's medical bills, David arranged for an anonymous donation to cover the costs. In his twisted mind, he was taking care of her, proving his love through secret actions. The most chilling part of David's obsession was how he created a false identity to occasionally interact with Jasmine in the real world. Using his technical skills, he crafted the persona of Daniel Rodriguez, a successful interior designer of Mexican heritage. He rented office space, created a fake portfolio, and even got recommendations from unwitting clients he had helped with small projects. As Daniel Rodriguez, David had actually been inside Jasmine's home. In 2021, when she and Marcus were redecorating their living room, Daniel had been recommended by a mutual friend. He spent 3 hours in their home, taking measurements, offering suggestions, and all the while installing microscopic cameras and listening devices throughout the house. From that day forward, David could see and hear everything that happened in the Thompson home. He watched Jasmine dance in her studio, listened to her conversations with Marcus, observed their intimate moments. He had turned their private sanctuary into his personal theater, and they had no idea they were performing for an audience of one. The level of surveillance was unprecedented. David had cameras in every room, microphones in the walls, and had even hacked into their smart home system. He could control their lights, their temperature, their security system. He could see what they watched on television, what they ordered for dinner, what time they went to bed. But David told himself this wasn't violation. It was love. He was protecting Jasmine, watching over her, making sure she was safe. In his delusional mind, he was her secret guardian, her invisible protector, her destined soulmate, who was just waiting for the right moment to reveal himself. That moment came in March 2023, when David discovered something that would shatter his fantasy world and trigger the most heinous crime Beverly Hills had seen in decades. Through his surveillance system, David had witnessed every moment of Jasmine and Marcus's relationship. He had watched their wedding day through hidden cameras, listened to their private vows, observed their honeymoon through hacked hotel room devices. Each milestone in their relationship was torture for David, but he told himself it was temporary. Jasmine was just confused, he believed. She would eventually realize that Marcus wasn't right for her. But on March 3rd, 2023, David's delusions were shattered by a conversation he overheard between Jasmine and her doctor during a telemedicine appointment. Jasmine was pregnant, 8 weeks along, healthy and glowing with happiness as she discussed her pregnancy with Marcus that evening. David watched through their bedroom camera as Marcus kissed Jasmine's still flat stomach, as they talked about baby names, as they planned their future as a family of 3. For David, this was the ultimate betrayal. In his twisted mind, Jasmine belonged to him. Her body belonged to him. The idea that she was carrying another man's child was not just heartbreaking, it was a violation of everything he believed about their destined connection. That night, David didn't sleep. He sat in his home office, surrounded by monitors showing different views of the Thompson house, and made a decision that would end 3 lives and destroy countless others. He was going to save Jasmine from her mistake. He was going to eliminate the obstacles that were keeping them apart. He was going to give her the life she truly deserved, with him. David's plan was methodical and terrifying in its precision. He had been studying the Thompson family's routines for years, and he knew exactly when and how to strike. Every Friday evening, Marcus came home at exactly 7:15 p.m. He would kiss Jasmine hello, change out of his work clothes, and join her and Rosa for dinner at 8:00 p.m. After dinner, Rosa would clean up while Marcus and Jasmine watched television in the living room. By 10:00 p.m., Rosa would return to her guest house, and Marcus and Jasmine would retire to their bedroom. David had also discovered that the house's ventilation system had a fatal flaw. Because of the home's open floor plan and the sophisticated climate control system, a substance introduced into the main air handler would circulate throughout the house within 15 minutes. On March 17, 2023, David acquired a potent anesthetic gas typically used in veterinary procedures. His plan was elegantly simple. He would introduce the gas into the ventilation system, wait for everyone to lose consciousness, then enter the house using the security codes he had long ago hacked. He would kill Marcus and Rosa while they were unconscious, making it appear as though they had died from a gas leak accident. Then he would rescue Jasmine, revive her, and present himself as her savior. In David's fantasy, a grateful and vulnerable Jasmine would finally see him as her protector and companion. They would leave Los Angeles together, start a new life somewhere far away, and live happily ever after. The pregnancy would be explained away as a tragic loss due to the gas leak. But David had made one crucial miscalculation. He had become so obsessed with watching Jasmine that he had stopped truly seeing her. He had been monitoring her actions but not understanding her emotions. He had been tracking her movements but not recognizing her growth. The Jasmine of 2023 was not the same vulnerable 19-year-old he had first become obsessed with. She was a successful businesswoman, a loving wife, and a woman who had learned to trust her instincts. She was stronger, smarter, and more observant than David realized. And on the night of March 17th, those qualities would save her life, and ultimately end his. Friday, March the 17th, 2023, began like any other day in the Thompson household. Marcus left for work at 7:30 a.m., kissing Jasmine goodbye and joking about how he could hardly wait to see her baby bump start showing. Rosa was already busy in the kitchen, preparing Jasmine's favorite breakfast, and chatting about her plans to visit her sister in Guatemala next month. Jasmine spent the morning teaching private dance lessons in her studio. Her afternoon was devoted to planning the curriculum for a new children's ballet program she was developing. She was full of energy and excitement about the future, completely unaware that someone was watching her every move and planning her husband's murder. At 5 p.m., David Chen began his final preparations. He drove to a storage unit he had rented under a false identity, where he had been stockpiling equipment for months. The anesthetic gas was stored in a small, professional-grade canister. He had practiced the timing dozens of times, calculating exactly how long it would take to circulate through the house and how long the occupants would remain unconscious. David had also prepared a rescue kit, an oxygen mask, antidote medications, and a story about how he had been driving by and noticed something wrong with the house. He had even prepared fake identification as a paramedic, complete with a realistic-looking medical bag. At 6:30 p.m., David parked his car 3 blocks away from the Thompson home and walked through the upscale neighborhood, dressed in dark clothing and carrying a backpack with his equipment. To anyone who might have seen him, he looked like a resident out for an evening jog. The Thompson house sat on a large lot, surrounded by mature trees and high hedges that provided plenty of privacy. David had identified the location of the main air handler months earlier, and he knew exactly how to access it without being detected by the security cameras. At 7 p.m., as the sun was setting over Beverly Hills, David reached the Thompson property. He used wire cutters to create a small opening in the back fence, then made his way to the air handler unit located behind the garage. His hands were steady as he connected the gas canister to the intake valve. In his mind, he was performing a rescue operation, saving Jasmine from a life she didn't really want. Inside the house, the evening was progressing normally. Marcus had texted that he was running a few minutes late due to traffic, and Rosa was in the kitchen preparing his favorite meal, braised short ribs with roasted vegetables. Jasmine was in her studio, practicing a new routine she planned to teach the following week. At 7:15 p.m., David released the gas into the ventilation system and began his 15-minute countdown. He crouched behind the pool house, watching the main house through night vision binoculars, waiting for signs that the occupants were losing consciousness. But David had made a critical error. Jasmine's pregnancy had been causing severe morning sickness that sometimes lasted all day. On this particular evening, she was feeling nauseous and had stepped out onto the back patio for fresh air, just as the gas began circulating through the house. At 7:25 p.m., Marcus arrived home to find the front door unlocked and the house eerily quiet. He called out to Jasmine and Rosa, but received no response. As he walked through the living room, he began to feel dizzy and disoriented. He made it halfway up the stairs before collapsing, the anesthetic gas overwhelming his system. Rosa, who had been working in the kitchen near the main air intake, was the first to succumb to the gas. She lost consciousness while standing at the stove, falling forward and hitting her head on the granite countertop. The impact was fatal, causing a severe brain hemorrhage that killed her instantly. At 7:30 p.m., David entered the house through the back door, using the security code he had obtained months earlier. He was wearing a gas mask and carrying his medical bag, prepared to find 3 unconscious people whom he would selectively revive or eliminate. Instead, he found Marcus collapsed on the staircase, barely breathing, and Rosa dead in the kitchen. But Jasmine was nowhere to be found. David began searching the house frantically. His plan was falling apart, and panic was setting in. He had never intended for Rosa to die. She was just supposed to be unconscious. And where was Jasmine? At 7:35 p.m., Jasmine returned to the house from the back patio and immediately knew something was wrong. The air smelled strange, and the house was too quiet. She called out to Marcus and Rosa, but heard no response. Her dancer's training had given her exceptional awareness of her body and surroundings, and every instinct was screaming that she was in danger. She found Marcus on the stairs, unconscious but breathing. She tried to wake him, but he was completely unresponsive. She ran to the kitchen and found Rosa's body, blood pooling around her head. Jasmine's first instinct was to call 911, but when she picked up the landline, there was no dial tone. When she tried her cell phone, there was no signal. That's when she heard footsteps coming from the direction of her dance studio. David had been searching the house methodically, and he was growing increasingly agitated. His perfect plan was crumbling. Rosa was dead, Marcus was dying, and Jasmine was awake and aware that something was wrong. He had to improvise, and improvisation had never been his strength. When David appeared in the kitchen doorway, Jasmine's first thought was that he was a paramedic or police officer responding to some kind of emergency. He was wearing medical scrubs and carrying a medical bag, and in her panicked state, she felt a moment of relief. "Thank God you're here," she said, rushing toward him. "My husband is unconscious and Rosa is—" "I know," David said, his voice strangely calm. "I'm here to help you, Jasmine." The use of her first name stopped her cold. She had never seen this man before in her life, but he knew her name. He was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite identify, intense, familiar, almost proprietary. "Who are you?" she asked, backing away from him. "I'm Daniel Rodriguez," David said, falling back on his false identity. "We've met before. I did the interior design consultation for your living room 2 years ago." Jasmine did remember Daniel Rodriguez, but something about this man seemed different. His voice, his mannerisms, even his appearance seemed slightly off. And why would an interior designer be dressed as a paramedic? "I don't understand," she said, continuing to back away. "How did you know to come here? Did someone call you?" "I've been watching over you, Jasmine," David said, his mask of normalcy beginning to slip. "I've been taking care of you for years. You just didn't know it." The words hit Jasmine like a physical blow. This wasn't a rescue. This was something far more sinister. She thought about the strange coincidences over the years, the anonymous donations, the feeling that someone was watching her. It had all been him. "You're the one who's been stalking me," she whispered. David's expression changed completely. The professional mask disappeared, replaced by something desperate and dangerous. "I haven't been stalking you," he said, his voice rising. "I've been loving you. I've been protecting you. I've been waiting for you to realize that we belong together." Jasmine's mind raced. Marcus was dying upstairs. Rosa was dead in the kitchen. Her phone wasn't working. And she was trapped in her own home with a man who had been obsessing over her for years. But Jasmine had one advantage that David had never accounted for in his years of surveillance. She was a survivor. She had grown up in East LA, where you learn to recognize danger and react quickly. She had built herself up from nothing, and she wasn't going to let anyone tear down what she had created. "You killed them," she said, backing toward the kitchen island, where she knew Rosa kept several large knives. "I didn't mean for Rosa to die," David said, following her. "She was just supposed to sleep. And Marcus was keeping you from your true destiny, with me." "You're insane," Jasmine said, her hand finding the knife block behind her back. "I'm in love," David corrected. "I've been in love with you for 15 years. I know everything about you, Jasmine. I know what you eat for breakfast, what you dream about at night, what you look like when you're sleeping. I know you better than you know yourself." The level of violation in his words was staggering. Jasmine realized that every private moment, every intimate conversation, every personal detail of her life had been observed and cataloged by this man. The pregnancy she had just discovered, the future she was planning with Marcus, he had been watching it all. "You're sick," she said, wrapping her fingers around the handle of a large chef's knife. "I'm devoted," David said, moving closer. "I've spent 15 years preparing for this moment. I've eliminated the obstacles that were keeping us apart. Now, we can finally be together." "I would never be with you," Jasmine said, pulling the knife from the block and holding it in front of her. "You're a murderer." David's face contorted with rage. "You don't understand what I've sacrificed for you, what I've done for you. I've loved you since you were 19 years old. I've taken care of you. I've protected you. You've terrorized me," Jasmine shouted back. "You violated every aspect of my life. You've killed my husband and my friend." "Your husband was wrong for you," David screamed. "He never appreciated what he had. He never loved you the way I love you." The argument might have continued, but at that moment, Marcus appeared in the kitchen doorway. He was barely conscious, leaning heavily against the doorframe, but he was alive. The gas had affected him, but his larger body mass and the fact that he had been near the stairs, farther from the main air circulation, had saved his life. "Jasmine," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Run!" David spun around, startled by Marcus's appearance. In that moment of distraction, Jasmine acted. She lunged forward with the knife, aiming for David's chest. But David was quicker than she expected. He grabbed her wrist and twisted, causing her to drop the knife. What followed was a desperate struggle for survival. David was stronger, but Jasmine was more agile. Marcus tried to help, but he was too weak from the gas to be effective. The fight moved through the kitchen, into the living room, up the stairs. David kept trying to explain, kept trying to make Jasmine understand that he was saving her, that he loved her, that they were meant to be together. But Jasmine was fighting for her life, and the life of her unborn child. The struggle ended in the master bedroom. David had cornered Jasmine near the window, and she was trapped with nowhere to run. He was breathing heavily, his medical scrubs torn, his face flushed with exertion and emotion. "This isn't how it was supposed to happen," he panted. "You were supposed to be grateful. You were supposed to see that I was rescuing you." "You're not rescuing me," Jasmine said, her back against the window. "You're destroying me." "I would never destroy you," David said, reaching for her. "I love you too much to destroy you." But as David reached for Jasmine, she grabbed the heavy crystal lamp from the bedside table and struck him in the head with all her strength. The blow was devastating. David collapsed to the floor, blood pooling beneath his head, his eyes staring sightlessly at the ceiling. Jasmine stood over his body, the lamp still in her hands, her whole body shaking with adrenaline and terror. She had killed him. She had killed the man who had stalked her for 15 years, who had murdered Rosa, who had tried to kill Marcus, who had violated every aspect of her private life. But she had also saved herself and her unborn child. Marcus was unconscious again, overcome by the gas and the exertion of trying to help. Jasmine managed to get the windows open and clear the air, then used her cell phone, which had suddenly regained signal, to call 911. When the police arrived at 8:47 p.m., they found a scene that would haunt the Beverly Hills Police Department for years to come. 3 people were dead: Rosa Martinez from a fatal head injury, David Chen from blunt force trauma to the head, and what appeared to be a failed home invasion turned murder-suicide. Marcus Thompson was alive, but hospitalized with severe anesthetic poisoning. Jasmine Thompson was physically unharmed, but psychologically devastated. But, as the investigation would soon reveal, this was no ordinary home invasion. This was the end result of a 15-year obsession that had escalated into the most sophisticated stalking case in California history. Detective Sarah Williams had seen her share of domestic violence cases, but nothing had prepared her for the scene at 1247 Sunset Ridge Drive. With 18 years on the force and a reputation for solving complex cases, Williams was called in specifically because of the unusual circumstances surrounding the Thompson murders. The first thing that struck Williams was the level of technology involved. The house was equipped with a sophisticated smart home system, security cameras, and various electronic devices that had all been compromised. But more disturbing was the discovery of additional surveillance equipment that didn't belong to the homeowners. "This isn't your typical breaking and entering," Williams told her partner, Detective Mike Rodriguez, as they surveyed the scene. "This guy had access to everything. He knew their routines, their schedules, their personal habits. This was planned for months, maybe years." The breakthrough came when Williams found David Chen's phone in his pocket. Unlike most criminals who are smart enough to dispose of evidence, David had kept detailed records of his surveillance activities. His phone contained thousands of photos and videos of Jasmine, dating back over a decade. But it was the discovery of the love letter that truly revealed the depth of David's obsession. The letter was addressed to "My dearest Jasmine" and contained intimate details about her life that only someone who had been watching her for years could know. It described her morning routine, her favorite foods, her dreams and fears, her relationship with Marcus, and even her recent pregnancy. The letter concluded with a chilling declaration: "Soon we will be together forever, without any obstacles to keep us apart. I have waited 15 years for this moment, and I will not wait any longer. You belong with me, and I belong with you. Death cannot separate true love." Williams knew immediately that this case was far more complex than a simple home invasion. This was a calculated assassination carried out by someone who had been planning it for years. But she also knew that proving it would require a level of digital forensics that was beyond the capabilities of the Beverly Hills Police Department. That's when Williams called in Max, a specialized German shepherd trained in electronic detection. Max had been trained by the FBI to locate hidden electronic devices, encrypted storage media, and sophisticated surveillance equipment. Within hours of arriving at the scene, Max had identified over 30 pieces of surveillance equipment hidden throughout the Thompson home. The equipment was incredibly sophisticated. Micro cameras no larger than a button were hidden in light fixtures, picture frames, and decorative objects. Audio recording devices were embedded in the walls, furniture, and even the ventilation system. The entire house had been turned into a surveillance network that would have made the NSA jealous. But the most disturbing discovery was David's command center. When police searched his Pasadena home, they found a room that had been converted into a monitoring station. Multiple computer screens showed real-time feeds from the Thompson house. Filing cabinets contained detailed logs of Jasmine's daily activities, going back to 2008. Photo albums were filled with pictures of Jasmine that had been taken without her knowledge from dozens of different locations. Williams had seen obsession before, but never at this level. David had created an entire parallel reality where he was Jasmine's invisible companion, watching her every move, analyzing her every decision, planning their future together. The psychological profile that emerged was of a man who had completely lost touch with reality, who had convinced himself that his criminal behavior was actually an expression of love. But the investigation revealed something even more disturbing. David Chen hadn't been working alone. Hidden in David's computer files, Williams found evidence of a network of stalkers who shared information, techniques, and even targets. David had been part of an online community of men who were obsessed with specific women and who helped each other carry out surveillance and harassment. The group called themselves True Love Warriors and believed that they were helping women escape from relationships that were wrong for them. The network had members across the country, and they had been operating for years without detection. They shared sophisticated surveillance techniques, hacking methods, and even provided alibis for each other when their activities escalated to criminal behavior. David had been one of the most active members, and his obsession with Jasmine had been well documented within the group. Williams realized that the Thompson case was just the tip of the iceberg. There were potentially hundreds of women across the country who were being stalked by members of this network, and most of them had no idea they were under surveillance. The FBI was called in to investigate the national scope of the network, but Williams remained focused on the immediate case. She needed to understand exactly how David had gained access to the Thompson home and how he had managed to carry out his surveillance undetected for so long. The answer lay in David's creation of the Daniel Rodriguez identity. Using sophisticated identity theft techniques, David had created a complete false persona, complete with business licenses, tax records, and professional references. As Daniel Rodriguez, he had legitimately been hired to work on the Thompson home renovation, giving him the access he needed to install his surveillance equipment. But Williams also discovered that David had been much more active in Jasmine's life than anyone had realized. He had been anonymously donating to her dance studio, sending her flowers on her birthday, and even arranging for her to receive job opportunities that advanced her career. In his twisted mind, he had been her secret benefactor, proving his love through anonymous acts of generosity. The investigation also revealed that David had been planning to kidnap Jasmine if his murder plot had failed. He had rented a remote cabin in the mountains, stocked it with supplies, and even prepared a room where he planned to hold her until she realized that she loved him too. The level of premeditation was staggering. As Williams delved deeper into the case, she began to understand the true scope of David's crimes. He hadn't just been stalking Jasmine, he had been manipulating her entire life. He had caused problems for men she had dated before Marcus, hoping to drive them away. He had sabotaged job opportunities that might have taken her away from Los Angeles. He had even been responsible for several accidents that had befallen people he perceived as threats to his relationship with Jasmine. The psychological evaluation of David Chen, conducted posthumously through his extensive written records and video journals, revealed a man who had completely lost touch with reality. He had created an elaborate fantasy world where he and Jasmine were in a loving relationship, where her marriage to Marcus was just a temporary obstacle, where his stalking behavior was actually romantic devotion. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of the case was how close David had come to succeeding. If Jasmine hadn't stepped outside for fresh air at exactly the right moment, if she hadn't been experiencing morning sickness from her pregnancy, if she hadn't had the strength and presence of mind to fight back, David's plan would have worked. Marcus and Rosa would have died. Jasmine would have been kidnapped, and David would have disappeared with her to his remote cabin. The case of David Chen and Jasmine Thompson became a landmark in stalking law enforcement. It demonstrated how modern technology could be used to carry out sophisticated surveillance and how social media and digital footprints could be exploited by determined criminals. It also highlighted the need for better protection for stalking victims and more resources for investigating cybercrimes. But for Williams, the most important outcome was that Jasmine Thompson was alive. She had survived 15 years of violation and one night of terror, and she had found the strength to fight back when it mattered most. The investigation was officially closed 6 months later, but Williams knew that the story was far from over. The FBI's investigation into the True Love Warriors network was ongoing, and dozens of other victims were being identified and protected. The case had revealed a dark corner of the internet where obsession and technology combined to create new forms of criminal behavior. The trial of People versus Thompson was a formality. Jasmine had clearly acted in self-defense, and the evidence of David Chen's extensive stalking and the murder of Rosa Martinez made her actions legally justified. The district attorney declined to press charges, and Jasmine was officially cleared of any wrongdoing. But legal vindication couldn't undo the psychological damage. Jasmine had learned that for 15 years, every private moment of her life had been observed and cataloged by a stranger. Every intimate conversation with Marcus, every personal struggle, every moment of vulnerability had been witnessed by someone who had constructed an elaborate fantasy around her. The violation was complete and devastating. Jasmine couldn't sleep in her own home, couldn't feel safe in her own body, couldn't trust her own memories. How many of the coincidences in her life had actually been David's manipulations? How many of the opportunities she had received had been arranged by him? How many of the problems she had faced had been caused by his interference? Marcus recovered from the anesthetic poisoning, but he was profoundly changed by the experience. He blamed himself for not protecting his wife and Rosa, even though there was no way he could have known about David's obsession. He became hypervigilant about security, installing additional cameras, hiring bodyguards, and researching every person who came into contact with their family. The pregnancy that had triggered David's final murderous plot became a source of both joy and anxiety. Jasmine was thrilled to be carrying Marcus's child, but she couldn't shake the fear that David's obsession might have somehow tainted even this most private and personal experience. They sold the Beverly Hills house and moved to a secure compound in Malibu. The new home was equipped with military-grade security systems, and they hired a team of former FBI agents to sweep for surveillance devices monthly. They changed their names, their phone numbers, their entire digital footprint, but the psychological scars ran deeper than any security system could protect. Jasmine suffered from severe PTSD, panic attacks, and agoraphobia. She couldn't bear to be photographed or to have her image posted online. She couldn't teach dance classes because she was afraid of being watched. She couldn't even go to the grocery store without feeling like she was being followed. Marcus dedicated himself to helping other stalking victims. He founded the Thompson Foundation, which provided resources and support for people who had been targeted by stalkers. The foundation funded research into cyber stalking, lobbied for stronger laws protecting victims, and provided financial assistance for security measures and legal fees. Rosa Martinez's death was perhaps the most tragic aspect of the entire case. She had been an innocent victim, killed simply because she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Her family in Guatemala was devastated by her loss, and the Thompsons established a scholarship fund in her name to help other young women from her hometown pursue education and opportunities in the United States. The baby was born healthy in October 2023. Jasmine and Marcus named him Gabriel, meaning God's messenger, because they felt that his conception had been the catalyst that finally ended David's obsession. Gabriel would grow up never knowing the terror that preceded his birth, but he would be raised with an acute awareness of the importance of privacy, security, and personal safety. Detective Williams continued to work on stalking cases, but the Thompson case had changed her approach to investigations. She now looked for signs of technological surveillance in all her cases, and she had developed new protocols for investigating cybercrimes. She also worked closely with the FBI to track down other members of the True Love Warriors network. The network, it turned out, had been responsible for dozens of stalking cases across the country. Several members were arrested and prosecuted, and the entire organization was dismantled. But Williams knew that other networks would emerge, using even more sophisticated technology and techniques. The Thompson case had shown that the internet had created new opportunities for criminals to violate and terrorize their victims in ways that were previously impossible. The FBI's investigation into the True Love Warriors network revealed a chilling pattern of escalation. David Chen had been one of the most sophisticated members, but he wasn't the only one whose obsession had turned deadly. In Colorado, a member of the network had kidnapped a woman he had been stalking for 8 years. In Texas, another member had set fire to his target's home when she refused to acknowledge his devotion. In New York, a network member had been arrested for planning to poison his target's boyfriend. The psychological profiles of these men were remarkably similar. They were typically intelligent, successful in their careers, and socially isolated. They had convinced themselves that their criminal behavior was actually romantic devotion, and they had created elaborate justifications for their actions. They saw themselves as heroes in their own twisted narratives, rescuing women from relationships that were wrong for them. But the most disturbing aspect of the network was how it had normalized and encouraged this behavior. Members shared techniques for surveillance, hacking, and manipulation. They provided emotional support for each other when their obsessions weren't reciprocated. They even celebrated when members escalated their activities, viewing it as evidence of their true love. The investigation led to changes in federal law. The Jasmine Thompson Act was passed by Congress, strengthening penalties for cyberstalking and providing additional resources for victims. The law also required social media companies and technology manufacturers to implement better privacy protections and to report suspected stalking behavior to law enforcement. But for Jasmine, no amount of legal reform could undo the damage that had been done. She had lost not just her sense of safety, but her sense of self. The woman who had once been confident and outgoing became withdrawn and fearful. The successful dance instructor who had built her career on grace and beauty could no longer bear to be seen by strangers. Therapy helped, but progress was slow. Jasmine had to rebuild her identity from scratch, learning to trust her own perceptions and to feel safe in her own body. She had to grieve not just for Rosa and for the life she had lost, but for the 15 years that had been stolen from her by David's obsession. Marcus struggled with his own trauma. He had been rendered helpless during the attack, unable to protect his wife and unborn child. He threw himself into his work with the foundation, but friends and family could see that he was driven by guilt and anger rather than healing. The successful businessman who had once been confident and optimistic became hypervigilant and suspicious. The couple's relationship was tested by the trauma they had endured. They both suffered from PTSD, but they experienced it differently. Jasmine became withdrawn and fearful, while Marcus became aggressive and overprotective. They went through periods where they couldn't bear to be touched, and other periods where they clung to each other desperately, but their love for each other and for their son ultimately proved stronger than their trauma. They worked through their issues in therapy, learning to communicate about their fears and to support each other through the healing process. They developed new traditions and rituals that helped them feel safe and connected. Gabriel's first birthday was a celebration of survival and hope. The family had moved to a new home in Northern California, where they could live more anonymously. Jasmine had begun teaching private dance lessons again, working with a small group of students who had been carefully vetted. Marcus had returned to his restaurant business, though he remained heavily involved in the foundation's work. The anniversary of Rose's death was always difficult. The family visited her grave every year, bringing flowers and telling Gabriel stories about the woman who had been like a grandmother to them. They had established a scholarship in her name at a university in Guatemala, helping other young women pursue their dreams. Detective Williams kept in touch with the family, checking in periodically to see how they were doing. She had developed a personal interest in their well-being, and she continued to monitor for any signs that other members of the network might be targeting them. The investigation had revealed that David had shared extensive information about Jasmine with his online contacts, and Williams worried that someone else might become obsessed with her. But as the years passed, the family began to heal. Jasmine's panic attacks became less frequent, and she slowly began to venture out into public spaces again. Marcus learned to channel his protective instincts into productive activities, focusing on helping other families rather than dwelling on his own trauma. Gabriel grew up to be a happy, healthy child who loved to dance like his mother and who had his father's entrepreneurial spirit. He would never know the full extent of what his family had endured, but he would be raised with an understanding of the importance of privacy, respect, and consent in all relationships. The Thompson case became a landmark in criminal justice education. Law enforcement agencies across the country studied the investigation techniques that had been used to uncover the network. The case was featured in textbooks, training materials, and conference presentations. But perhaps the most important legacy of the case was the awareness it raised about the dangers of cyber stalking and the need for better protection for victims. The Thompson Foundation's work led to the development of new technologies for detecting surveillance equipment, new legal remedies for stalking victims, and new resources for law enforcement agencies investigating these crimes. The Thompson case revealed a disturbing truth about modern technology and its potential for abuse. David Chen's ability to surveil Jasmine so extensively was made possible by the proliferation of connected devices, social media platforms, and digital communication systems that most people used without thinking about the privacy implications. The investigation showed that David had been able to access Jasmine's information through dozens of different sources. Her smartphone provided location data, browsing history, and communication records. Her social media accounts revealed her interests, relationships, and daily activities. Her smart home system allowed him to monitor her movements within her own house. Her online shopping habits told him about her preferences and her schedule. Her fitness tracker showed him her sleep patterns and her health information. Each piece of information by itself might seem harmless, but combined together, they created a detailed profile of Jasmine's life that was more comprehensive than what most people knew about themselves. David had been able to use this information to predict her behavior, manipulate her circumstances, and ultimately plan her husband's murder. The case highlighted the need for better privacy protections in the digital age. Most people had no idea how much information they were sharing or how that information could be used against them. They trusted technology companies to protect their data, but they didn't understand the vulnerabilities that existed in the systems they used every day. The investigation also revealed the limitations of existing laws in dealing with cybercrimes. Traditional stalking laws were designed for physical harassment and weren't adequate for addressing the sophisticated surveillance techniques that David had used. Law enforcement agencies didn't have the resources or expertise to investigate these crimes effectively, and prosecutors struggled to explain the technical aspects of the cases to judges and juries. But the case also demonstrated the resilience of the human spirit. Jasmine had survived 15 years of violation and one night of terror, and she had found the strength to fight back when it mattered most. Her survival had not only saved her own life, but it also led to the discovery of a network of criminals who were terrorizing women across the country. The Thompson Foundation's work became a model for other organizations fighting cyber stalking. The foundation developed educational programs to help people understand the risks of sharing personal information online. They created resources for stalking victims, including legal assistance, security consulting, and psychological support. They lobbied for stronger laws and better law enforcement training. The foundation also funded research into new technologies for protecting privacy and detecting surveillance. They worked with engineers and programmers to develop apps and devices that could help people identify when they were being monitored. They partnered with universities to study the psychology of stalking and to develop better intervention strategies. But perhaps most importantly, the foundation worked to change cultural attitudes about stalking and harassment. They challenged the romanticized portrayals of persistent pursuit in movies and television shows. They educated people about the difference between romantic interest and criminal behavior. They helped victims understand that they were not responsible for their attackers' actions. The impact of the Thompson case extended far beyond the immediate victims. It changed how law enforcement agencies investigated stalking cases, how technology companies thought about privacy, and how society understood the dangers of the digital age. It demonstrated that the tools we use to connect and communicate can also be used to violate and terrorize. The case also highlighted the importance of trusting one's instincts. Jasmine had experienced years of subtle signs that something was wrong. The feeling of being watched, the coincidences that seemed too convenient, the sense that someone was interfering in her life. She had dismissed these feelings as paranoia, but her instincts had been correct all along. The story of David Chen and Jasmine Thompson became a cautionary tale about the dark side of technology and the importance of protecting our privacy in an increasingly connected world. It showed that the most dangerous threats often came not from strangers in dark alleys, but from people who use technology to invade our most private spaces. 5 years after the events of March 17, 2023, the Thompson family had built a new life based on hard-won wisdom about privacy, security, and the importance of trusting one's instincts. Jasmine had returned to teaching dance, though she worked exclusively with private students in a secure studio. Marcus had expanded his restaurant business and continued his work with the foundation. Gabriel was a bright, energetic 5-year-old who loved to dance and had inherited his parents' strength and resilience. The case of David Chen remained a landmark in criminal justice and cybersecurity. It had led to significant changes in how law enforcement investigated stalking cases, how technology companies protected user privacy, and how society understood the dangers of the digital age. But the most important lesson of the Thompson case was about the nature of love itself. David Chen had claimed to love Jasmine, but his actions revealed that what he felt was not love at all. Love respects boundaries, honors consent, and wants what is best for the other person. What David felt was possession, obsession, and a desperate need to control another human being. True love, as demonstrated by Marcus and Jasmine's relationship, involves mutual respect, open communication, and the willingness to sacrifice for the other person's well-being. It builds up rather than tears down, protects rather than violates, and creates safety rather than fear. The Thompson case also demonstrated the importance of community and support systems. Jasmine's survival had depended not just on her own strength, but on the help of law enforcement, medical professionals, legal advocates, and mental health counselors. Her healing had been aided by the support of friends, family, and other survivors who understood what she had endured. Detective Williams continued to work on stalking cases, but she had developed new protocols and techniques based on what she had learned from the Thompson investigation. She had become a national expert on cyberstalking and had trained law enforcement officers across the country in the latest techniques for investigating these crimes. The True Love Warriors network had been completely dismantled, but Williams knew that other networks would emerge. The internet had created new opportunities for criminals to find and support each other, and law enforcement agencies would need to stay ahead of these evolving threats. The Thompson Foundation had grown into a national organization, with chapters in major cities across the United States. The foundation's work had helped hundreds of stalking victims, led to the passage of stronger laws, and raised awareness about the dangers of cyber stalking. But perhaps the most important work of the foundation was its educational programs. By teaching people about the risks of sharing personal information online, the warning signs of stalking behavior, and the importance of trusting their instincts, the foundation was helping to prevent other people from becoming victims. The story of David Chen and Jasmine Thompson was ultimately a story about the power of human resilience and the importance of fighting back against those who would try to control and terrorize us. It was a reminder that in an age of increasing connectivity and decreasing privacy, we must all be vigilant about protecting ourselves and supporting those who are under attack. It was also a story about the enduring power of love, real love, not the twisted obsession that David had mistaken for love. Marcus and Jasmine's relationship had been tested by unimaginable trauma, but it had survived and even grown stronger. Their love for each other and for their son had given them the strength to rebuild their lives and to help others who were facing similar challenges. The case had shown that the most dangerous threats often came from those who claimed to love us, but who actually sought to possess and control us. It had demonstrated that technology could be used as a weapon against the innocent, but also that it could be used as a tool for justice and protection. Most importantly, the Thompson case had proven that no matter how sophisticated the threat, no matter how long the stalking continued, no matter how helpless the situation seemed, it was always possible to fight back. Jasmine's survival had been a testament to the power of the human spirit and the importance of never giving up hope. In the end, the story of David Chen and Jasmine Thompson was a reminder that we must all be guardians of our own privacy and protectors of our own safety. We must trust our instincts, seek help when we need it, and never allow anyone to violate our boundaries or threaten our well-being. The digital age had brought us many benefits, but it had also created new dangers. The Thompson case had shown us what those dangers looked like and how we could protect ourselves from them. It had given us the tools and knowledge we needed to stay safe in an increasingly connected world. But most importantly, it had reminded us that love, real love, was about respect, consent, and the willingness to put another person's well-being above our own desires. It was about building up rather than tearing down, protecting rather than violating, and creating safety rather than fear. The Thompson family had learned these lessons the hard way, but they had used their experience to help others and to make the world a safer place. Their story was a testament to the power of survival, the importance of justice, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. In a world where technology made it easier than ever to invade someone's privacy, to stalk and harass and terrorize, the Thompson case stood as a reminder that we must all be vigilant protectors of our own safety and advocates for those who are under attack. We must never allow the tools of connection and communication to become weapons of violation and control. The story of David Chen and Jasmine Thompson was ultimately a story about the triumph of good over evil, of love over obsession, of strength over vulnerability. It was a reminder that no matter how dark the circumstances, no matter how helpless the situation seemed, there was always hope for justice, healing, and redemption. As we reflect on the Thompson case and its implications for our digital age, we must remember that technology is neither inherently good nor evil. It is a tool that can be used for either purpose. The same systems that allow us to connect with loved ones, pursue our dreams, and build our careers can also be used to violate our privacy, stalk our movements, and terrorize our lives. The responsibility lies with all of us to use technology wisely, to protect our own privacy and respect others, and to remain vigilant against those who would use these tools for harmful purposes. We must educate ourselves about the risks, trust our instincts when something feels wrong, and seek help when we need it. The Thompson case showed us that the most dangerous threats often come from those who claim to love us, but actually seek to possess and control us. It reminded us that real love respects boundaries, honors consent, and wants what is best for the other person, not what serves our own desires. But perhaps most importantly, the case demonstrated that no matter how sophisticated the threat, no matter how long the stalking continues, no matter how helpless the situation seems, it is always possible to fight back. Jasmine's survival and the subsequent dismantling of the True Love Warriors network proved that justice is possible, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. The Thompson family's journey from victims to survivors to advocates showed us that healing is possible, that trauma can be overcome, and that our worst experiences can sometimes become the source of our greatest strength. Their work with the Foundation has helped countless others and has made the world a safer place for all of us. In the end, the story of David Chen and Jasmine Thompson is a reminder that we must all be guardians of our own safety and protectors of those who are vulnerable. We must never allow the tools of connection and communication to become weapons of violation and control. And we must always remember that love, real love, is about respect, consent, and the willingness to put another person's well-being above our own desires. The digital age has brought us many benefits, but it has also created new dangers. The Thompson case has shown us what those dangers look like and how we can protect ourselves from them. It has given us the tools and knowledge we need to stay safe in an increasingly connected world. But most importantly, it has reminded us that the human spirit is stronger than any technology, that love is more powerful than obsession, and that justice will ultimately prevail over evil. The Thompson family story is a testament to the power of survival, the importance of fighting back, and the enduring strength of the human heart. As we move forward into an even more connected future, we must carry these lessons with us. We must remain vigilant, trust our instincts, and never allow anyone to violate our boundaries or threaten our well-being. We must use technology wisely and responsibly, and we must always remember that behind every screen, every device, every digital interaction, there are real human beings with real feelings and real rights to privacy and safety. The story of David Chen and Jasmine Thompson will continue to serve as a warning and an inspiration for years to come. It will remind us of the dangers we face in the digital age, but also of our capacity to overcome those dangers through courage, resilience, and the power of human connection. In a world where it's easier than ever to invade someone's privacy, to stalk and harass and terrorize, the Thompson case stands as a reminder that we must all be vigilant protectors of our own safety and advocates for those who are under attack. We must never allow the tools of connection and communication to become weapons of violation and control. The Thompson family's journey from victims to survivors to advocates is a testament to the power of the human spirit and the importance of never giving up hope. Their story reminds us that no matter how dark the circumstances, no matter how helpless the situation seems, there is always the possibility of justice, healing, and redemption. This is the legacy of the Thompson case, a reminder that we must all be guardians of our own safety, protectors of those who are vulnerable, and advocates for a world where technology serves to connect and empower us, rather than to violate and control us. It is a story of survival, justice, and the enduring power of love to overcome even the darkest of human impulses.